Today's reading covers two chapters, 2 Chronicles chapter 27 and 28. 27 is a very short chapter, but we see there is the good King Jotham. And even though he has a short history, we learn in verse 6 that, or in the passage, he follows God wholeheartedly. And verse 6, so Jotham became strong because he established his ways before Yahweh his God. Even though today the legacy he left is a very short chapter, there may be more information in the king's account, but he left a good legacy. And verse 9, after he died, they buried him in the city of David. This is where they bury the good kings. And then chapter 28, we see the contrast of a bad king. This bad king, he went and trusted in idols, even to the point of burning his own children. That's what some of the pagan worship did in the past. And you see that in verse 3. According to the abominations of the nations, whom Yahweh had dispossessed from before the sons of Israel, he and all the Israelites with him forgot history. They forgot how God had given them the promised land by kicking out these pagan nations that were enemies of God. And what does he go and do, King Ahaz? He goes to worship those same idols that they had kicked out. And because of that, God gave them over to their enemies, to Israel. And in verse 8, you see to the point where even the sons of Israel carried away captive of their brothers. Remember, the divide caused the kingdom of Judah, then the kingdom of Israel. And the kingdom of Judah is the one that God has still held on to keep his covenant, not because they were better than the nation of Israel. They were both wicked many times, but because of God's promise to David, God's promise to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David. So to the point where these people, they're all from the same line descendants, but they're fighting against one another. And the Judah loses. But what happens in verse 9? But a prophet of Yahweh was there, whose name was Oded. He went out before the army which came to Samaria, and said to them, behold, because of the wrath of Yahweh, the God of your fathers, against Judah, he has given them into your hand, and ye have killed them in a rage which has even reached heaven. The prophet Oded must have been telling King Ahaz and all the people of Judah, hey, repent, stop doing what you're doing, these abominations, your idolatry, but they did not listen. Then when the invading army of Israel comes and basically destroys Judah and takes captive many of the people, the prophet then turns to preach to the invaders. And we see the boldness of the prophet. He could have been killed for this. Just trying to speak. Imagine trying to speak to your enemy and telling them what they're doing wrong and that they need to turn around. But the amazing thing is God had mercy on Judah and put it in the hearts of the invaders to let the captives go. And not just to let them go. Look at this. Verse 15. Then the men who were designated by name arose, took hold of the captives, and they clothed all their naked ones from the spoil, and they gave them clothes and sandals, fed them and gave them drink, anointed them with oil, led all their feeble ones, I love this one, on donkeys, and brought them to Jericho, the city of palm trees, to their brothers. And they returned to Samaria. They cared for the captives. They treated them as friends, as allies, as family. And again, that is not because King Ahaz was faithful. You see, he gets even worse. He now calls to a whole different nation. Instead of calling to God, he calls out to a pagan nation for help in verse 16, the kingdom of Syria. And what happens? Instead, verse 20, so Tilgath-Pilneser, king of Assyria, came against him and distressed him instead of strengthening him. When we trust in idols, anything apart from God, you see the result. Something that is not God cannot help us, cannot save us. And instead, the nation became worse off for what it is, to the point that when King Ahaz died, they did not bury him in the tombs of the kings of Israel. He was not worthy to be there. And this is just a reminder. Are we going to be good and follow and obey God's commands and honor him? Are we going to be bad and leave a legacy of destruction? And in the end, that's the only life. You could say verse 27, not being buried in the tombs of the kings is also a representation of you're not going to take part in the promise for David and his line. And he'd be in his own way. King Ahaz is in hell right now. It doesn't matter if he was king on the earth. He has nothing now. And what will we choose?